This one looked real. A purchase order from a county. Everything checked out until it didn't. Today on Chaos and Caffeine, how a spoofed email nearly triggered a costly mistake and the red flags that saved us.
Hello and welcome to Chaos and Caffeine, episode 41. Yes, 41. In any case, today I've got a couple of things we're going to do. I wanted to do something a little technical. What I've decided to do is answer a few quick questions that I've heard directed at me or I have seen on the internet. Do a couple of those. Haven't decided which ones yet. I'll decide those on the fly. Then I'm going to talk about something related to cybersecurity. And this is one that we ran into this week. And it would have been very, very, very easy to fall for the scam. And believe it or not, the people involved in the spoofing scam are still trying to keep it going. And we're in contact with I guess we'll call it victim. It's a county. I'm not going to give details on it because I don't want to add to the issues going on there, but we're going to cover that as the second part of what we're doing. I'll also cover a little bit on answering some questions on capabilities of ESA and MCSA that have been wrongly discussed. So, in any case, today Janine brought me something called Summer Moon Coffee, and it's kind of a blank box. You get this from the actual coffee shop. They're apparently in a number of places. There's one supposed to be near here, and there's a collection here. So depending on how fast we go through these, we'll see. I selected one for today because I've tried some of the other ones already. They're quite interesting. This one's called Fireside. It's a medium roast, and it's supposed to have hints of cinnamon and semi-sweet chocolate. Now, what's supposed to be unique about this Summer Moon coffee is that it's roasted with wood. And so I had to try, I think it was the Inferno already, which is bold dark chocolate. It was quite good. And yeah, the smoky flavor was there. So we're going to go ahead and start with that. Then I'm going to answer a couple of questions, meander around a little bit. Then we're going to get into that other topic. So real quick. So it looks pretty good. It has kind of a neutral aroma to it. Not like the one that I'd gotten a few weeks ago that was extremely aromatic. I actually one day decided to leave one of the coffee pods out for that other one just to, liven up my office a little bit. So in any case, let's go ahead and try it. This is the Fireside. Yep, definitely a little bit of cinnamon. The semi-sweet chocolate is kind of there. The smoky flavor is definitely there. That actually adds a little bit something to it. Now, these are not extreme caffeine or anything like that. They're nice. So let's go ahead and get to the topics. So number of questions have come up. I'm going to cover the one that was posted when I said, hey, if you've got a specific topic you want us to cover, and I'm going to keep that going. If you see us, hey, we're coming up, we're going to talk this weekend, or in general, you want to message me on LinkedIn or put something on in the comments on YouTube and stuff like that, ask questions. It'll be something I start doing on here. So one of the biggest questions I got, because there's been a lot of incorrect information related to electrical and current signature analysis for some time. Now, we focus on more the traditional methodology, which, is basically, for our standard data collection, it is spectral analysis, meaning we're looking for specific peaks. We do simple filtering, and then we look for the associated peaks that we want. Now, we do have some IP stuff there, and that's the reason why the Empower in particular, as well as the Empath, are extremely accurate. We don't discuss those except with users, and they're very, very specific, and they're those things where we're watching everybody make things extremely complicated. We just went simple, and simple turned out to be better. Even in our machine learning / AI system for continuous monitoring, that's not much different. So in any case, let's get down to brass tacks. One question. We want to do large hydro units. We heard that ESA and current signature cannot do Babbitt style bearings or sleeve bearings. That is absolutely incorrect. There are specific patterns you look for. Some of them infer the bearings, but when you couple them up with the specific signatures that you look for, it's dead on. So just like with a standard bearing, we also look at that IP direction, and the combination of those two allow us for an extremely early fault detection. We can pick up oil whirl. We can pick up the loose bearings. We can pick up a bunch of other things, and it's really not that incredibly secret. Now we have for the version coming out of the Empower coming up here soon, that will be built in because we've been seeing people using the technology a lot more, especially me. So I know how to see it when I look at the patterns. We did build it into the odd one, so even the audiovisual software we have that we give all our customers, that picks that up as well. So yes, you can absolutely do that. Next question I got these are out of order. So the next question I got was one that was posted to, hey, we're going to talk technical. If you have something you want to cover, let us know. And that one had to do with on fans, both bearings being locked. Well, it's not just fans. It's any application, both bearings being locked, especially the higher speed applications, but even slower speed applications. In an electric motor, for instance, say a ball bearing motor, you will usually lock one bearing. Most often it's the drive end. And then the opposite drive end, which is also referred to as a pilot bearing. So if I have a vertical with a hollow shaft, the drive end is actually the top and the pilot is the bottom. And on a regular motor, the drive end is normally the primary bearing and the opposite drive end is the pilot. The primary bearing is usually locked in place. You might have a spring or something in the housing to put a little pressure on the outer race so that you don't get a lot of looseness and noise and reduce the life of the machine. But you have to have movement. It has to expand. And the question had to do with, can we detect that in ESA? We absolutely can. What you look for is stresses on components of the bearings itself. You will normally see a ball, an inner and or outer race signature because you, after the machine is run for a little bit, because as the shaft grows, it pushes out against the bearings. And when it does that, it can't expand anywhere. You're going to have everything running off of where it's supposed to roll in the bearing itself. Now, part of that had to do with, the type of coupling as well. And I'm just going to go off the assumption because I'm not reading it right now. But the type of coupling, when we're reading through it with electrical and current signature analysis, I did a paper on this for Power Engineering Society in 2025. And what we found was even flexible couplings, like the really squishy ones that are meant to isolate and everything else, those only drop your loss, your reading by about 1 to 1.5 dB. So when I'm looking for 5 dB changes to indicate a fault, you're well within that range. Things might soften up just a little bit, but everything still has to pass through the motor air gap. Next question had to do, and we had already done a case study on this. We were asked if we could do large synchronous generators. Yes, with both electrical and current signature analysis. Usually, I prefer to use electrical signature analysis because voltage signature is generally done on the generator. But we can still see it with current signature analysis because it kind of reflects off of the transformer. So you will see those conditions from there. In the case study we did, and this is a previous Chaos and Caffeine, we did talk about a smaller synchronous generator, about 55 megawatt, 13.8 kV. And in that one, we identified a problem with the rotor that everybody had missed. It would show up good, and then it wouldn't. And it had to do with little metal bits all the way through it. Ferrous termites, we'll call those. So those are, I think, the primary ones. And this one came up while we were doing a demonstration at a site Thursday down south, and basically it was they had heard that you couldn't do electrical or current signature analysis on equipment unless it was about 60% loaded. Okay, that is put out by one specific manufacturer because the amount of time they take data, the resolution isn't that great. So, the resolution, just like with vibration, is 1 over the time. If I want to get hertz, it's 1 over the time in seconds. So the empath is, basically about 50 seconds. 1 over 50 comes out to be about 0.01 hertz. And 0.01 hertz is not too bad. It's a fraction of an RPM. And then the empower unit is 120 seconds, which is 0.008 hertz. We chop off about 10 seconds just to make sure everything's settled. So 110, which is still 0.009 hertz. Now, if I wanted to go to 0.001, that actually takes 15 minutes. So that's really the only limitation. So when we're talking about motors running close to synchronous, once in a while, depending on how shaky if there's a lot of harmonics present in the system, the motor will actually imperceptibly change speed a little bit because your line frequency will jitter a little bit, so we'll get a little bit of a delta at the bottom. And the problem we run into there is that the pole pass frequencies will be relatively close to those peaks and might cut through them, but you can usually distinguish visually whether that's the case or not. But we do unloaded motors all the time. As a matter of fact, we've got a lot of repair shops that do current signature and electrical signature analysis in the shop to look for conditions that you won't see with vibration, where you do need the load so that the energy of the loss, say side-to-side movement or radial movement, can travel through the housing to your accelerometer. I prefer accelerometers. There's been a lot of discussion on MEMS and stuff like that lately, and I'm less and less impressed the more I see. The dummy light thing, and we're not even just talking about placement of the sensors anymore. We're talking about, I'm not a fan of triacs or that. I've decided to go back to my roots. If other people like it, that's fine. I am not condemning the technology. I just like accuracy. Did I say that out loud? So, let's get into our adventure this week, and that way we're going to keep this really, really short. So basically what happened is one of our vendors received a request for quotation that looked really interesting from a county nearby. So it was assigned to us because we were the closest, and we had email exchanges with a gentleman. Their email address was at the county, whatever the county was, il.org. Now, in Illinois, most of them are, DuPage, so it'd be DuPageCounty.org. Illinois doesn't normally, the counties in Illinois do not normally put an IL in there. So I didn't see that right away. Because the name was correct, everything else looked correct, the area code was correct, and the person we were exchanging information with was responding to the emails. So we went ahead and quoted the stuff, and in the back of my mind, I'm having a little bit of a red flag that the combination of equipment they were looking for didn't really make sense. But they ordered one of everything that the company offered, including training. And it was like, okay, maybe they have electric vehicles. Maybe they have this and that. I didn't look anything up at the time. I was traveling. I was in a hurry. And I always say, if in the end, if I'd given it to a customer service person, based on the conversation I had with the actual person from that county, they would have done what apparently others have done with this particular thing. So this gentleman was targeted for whatever reason. We'll get into that in a minute. And the county was targeted for whatever reason. And this email was set up. And then I get a purchase order. And open it up. It looks legit, but there were a couple of red flags there too. So first red flag, because we do a lot of government and county work throughout the U.S., was it went to a random warehouse. It didn't go to an actual county building. They claimed it was a county building, but it wasn't a county building. Next red flag was that there was no setting us up as a vendor. So whenever I'm dealing with government or whatever else, especially government, they're going to have to ask for my cage code and stuff like that because we're a military contractor. So didn't have that. Didn't request anything else. Didn't want to do all the things you normally do when processing an order, especially of the size that order was. It was significant. Let's just say it would have done a lot of financial damage if it was actually processed. Hence why they were doing it. And this was a really, really well done scam. So you highlight it, and there's the guy's email address, just il.org added to the end instead of county.org. And if you're not familiar with it, it looked exactly legit. As a matter of fact, I even quoted it because it looked actually legit. So those were the first red flags. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to wait till I get back to the hotel, and then I'm going to take a look at this order because they wanted a response. Now they're actually responding to it. So I start looking things up. So first off, the phone number, because I was going to call the gentleman directly the next day just to confirm things. The phone number on the PO went to a suicide hotline. The EIN doesn't exist in Illinois. The tax exempt code doesn't exist in Illinois. It wasn't even the right format. Well, I knew that because I do that work for a company. I oversee that. So, I'm the owner. So I'm stepping down across this, and it's like, yeah, every red flag says they're not legit. Plus the fact that they had the maintenance manager signing a purchase order for that kind of value. If it was $1,000 or $2,000, great. But when you get into 6 digits, that makes no sense whatsoever. So in the meantime, other people were kind of excited about this order, and I'm going. And then I disappointed everybody when I went back and I said, this is not legit. I'm going to contact the county and see what's going on. I sent an email because this is where they got his information. His actual phone number and his actual email address are on the county website. So easily scraped, right? But this is a very targeted attack. People think that, it's generic. No. 2/3 of the time a cyber attack happens, it is a targeted attack. 1/3 of that, or half of that, is usually an ex-employee or somebody who, or somebody even not even an ex-employee, but somebody trying to cause some kind of trouble. So I'm in a meeting the next day in the morning. I was going to give the guy a call while I'm driving, and he calls me instead. And I see the number, and I excused myself out of the meeting because I'm figuring this is important. And I talked to the guy, and I find he had said, "Oh yeah, thanks for sending it because I have to give it to the sheriff's office so they can continue the investigation." I emailed him on a subsequent email because we're continuing to get the emails. Recommended he also put it into ic3.gov, which is FBI's cybersecurity division for investigating fraud and other things, because this is serious. Now, because of my background, I went ahead and did a background search. Now, I also did something interesting, and I compared what I was doing to a quick query on Microsoft Copilot. Now, Microsoft Copilot is supposed to be 30-some% inaccurate. So it turned out to be relatively accurate. Now, my investigation came up with, it appeared to be so in Illinois, everybody uses they all use the Microsoft 365 stuff, or almost all of them for Illinois. So it wasn't a Microsoft 365 account. The actual account owner traced back to India, and so did the actual web address, the IP address, or not just the IP address, but the web address also traced back to someplace out of the country. That doesn't mean it was there. It just means it was registered there. I didn't want to put much more time than that because it's somebody else's investigation. There was enough stuff there that I could trace it all the way back. We're going to do our own IC3.gov reporting because I just got another email today demanding that I must ship it now and I must acknowledge their order or I'll lose all business with the government. So, of course, they went under the assumption of what everybody does, and that is we rely so much on email and phone calls now that scam would have gotten away. I'm not going to post what we received, but let's just say, with the exception of those handful of red flags, if that had hit a customer service person, they would have processed it to the point where I discovered that we were actually a relatively low value for the ones that fell for it. And that included semi-trucks being purchased in Texas and shipped to Illinois. I'm going to let that sink in. Other heavy equipment being purchased off of fake purchase orders and shipped to that county in Illinois and to odd places. So it arrives there, nobody knows what to do with it, and the phone numbers aren't legit, things like that. Luckily for me, the person was an easy Google. So I was able to contact them, make sure. Now the email address that they had, they spoofed it, which means that they put in it looked like the correct email address. So if you're using Outlook or your email thing allows you just move your cursor up over it and the actual email address shows up. What they did that was really tricky was the email address looked almost identical, again, except for the IL in there. So it's always something really tiny. Sometimes they'll do something where they'll put R and N in a web address so that it looks like an M. That's another cute trick that we run into. And I became acquainted with this stuff through a number of things over time. Some things we've dealt with. I've been told that people don't target, and this is a perfect example of showing that we're not talking about the person involved was just a maintenance manager. We're not talking about targeting a political figure or the head of a company or whatever. We're talking about somebody that may have pissed somebody off or just was randomly selected. And I would leave out the randomly selected because this is so targeted and there's so much effort behind it. Somebody says, well, how could this? Well, believe it or not, there's organizations within certain countries, I'll just put it that way, that will do these types of attacks for hire. And it doesn't cost a lot of money to do it. So you go, what's the financial gain in it? Well, they're not receiving any product. They're not receiving any financial benefit. So this tells me, my flag goes, based upon the patterns involved and the work I did with NIST and everybody else back then, and the meeting with Chris Shepis back in 2015 of DHS was basically when there's no direct financial gain, it's either revenge or they're receiving payment to work on it. And that everything else is there to cause a nuisance, stress somebody out, cause as much damage as they can, because I guarantee that there's legal stuff going on, and well, I know there is legal stuff going on and everything else on all the stuff. Now, good news again for us was we didn't lose anything because we caught it. But if somebody else had processed the order within our organization, they might not have caught it. So this becomes very important to educate your personnel. And what I did is I followed the stop, think, do. Okay, so stop when you get something, anything via email where you don't know the person on the other end. And even then, because spoofing, that's where you have a legitimate looking email on top and a fake one behind it. And there's even websites you go to now where you can put in a fake name and it even covers it so that when you hover over the email, you'll see the other email too. Those were put out there as joke ones, and those were primarily out of countries in Europe and South. I'll just say. So those tended to come from the traditional places that you would think of for scams. Now that whole thing, because of the condition of everything, everybody's, they're all increased, all of these types of things. So that was my kind of focus today. I wasn't even going to talk about this one except for this organization that's doing this is so freaking persistent. And like I said, I'll turn it over to ic3.gov, and if the FBI thinks it's serious enough, they'll shut down the website. And then the people will pop up somewhere else, but it'll take the pressure off the county gentleman. So that is it. Just situational awareness. I mean, just like going out and doing the work in the field that we do and everything else, the situational awareness of these scams, spoofing things. Again, everybody keeps going, money. Not everybody's motivated by money. As a matter of fact, the Cisco reports usually state that it's usually something else. 2/3 or more of the time, it's some kind of thing to inconvenience somebody, to take their or damage their business for whatever reason. 2/3, a significant portion is revenge of some sort. And with that, we will drop off today. Send me a few questions for next week. I will get into that, and I think next week I want to stay on the technical thing again for a little bit. We have a few things coming up this week. I've got a newsletter coming out this weekend, so we will have. We will be discussing what we're finishing up this weekend as far as new software goes for our continuous monitoring next weekend, I believe. So a little bit on the Empower CMS2. And for those who are interested, the Empath 9.0 and 9.1, they're two separate tools with options, of course. And as I said, you don't want to give people options because then they don't decide. But if you hear us asking questions about the application, then we're trying to help you select one version or the other. All the other stuff, all the standards work is carrying on. Putting together the presentation for Seagray Paris this weekend on the status of A178, which is the guide for electrical and current signature analysis. There's a few other surprises that I'm not allowed to announce yet. It is going to be an exciting year for electrical and current signature analysis, and I'm sure you're seeing some people have heard about it because all of a sudden they magically have a product. Although, we'll just leave it there. In any case, thank you for joining us again. I wanted to go 30 minutes and we managed that. So have a great rest of the weekend. Hope this was helpful. Hope the warning there was definitely helpful. If you have any questions related to any of this stuff, feel free to reach out through our website or especially in the comments. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure to like and subscribe.